It's 1530. Niccolò Machiavelli is sitting in a freezing farmhouse in Tuscany, and he is ruined. This is the guy who used to whisper in the ears of kings. Now, he's in exile, arguing with local butchers over pennies. But at night, he does something weird. He scrubs off the mud, puts on the royal robes he used to wear at court, and enters his study. He treats that empty room like a palace. He lights a candle and writes a thin little book that ends up terrifying the world for 500 years. He writes, The Prince. Everyone thinks this book is a how-to guide for being a jerk. They think it teaches you to be evil. It doesn't. Machiavelli wasn't teaching people how to be wicked. He was just the first guy brave enough to turn on the lights in a room everyone else wanted to keep dark. He looked at the world not as it should be, but as it actually is. This is the first lesson of The Crown. This is the price of waking up. We grow up on Disney logic. Mom and Dad tell us that if you're nice, honest, and play by the rules, the universe will high-five you. That's a beautiful lie. It's a warm blanket, but Machiavelli rips the blanket off. He says, if you try to be a saint in a world of sharks, you're going to get eaten. It stings because it's true. Look at your own job. Who gets the promotion? The quiet, competent worker who stays late, or the loudmouth in sales who buys the CEO drinks, steals credit for the project, and knows exactly whose hand to shake. That's the surgical incision of reality. The tragedy of the naive idealist is that they believe their virtue is a shield. They walk into a meeting with good intentions, holding a flower, and they are surprised when they are devoured. Machiavelli suggests a different path. He doesn't ask you to become a wolf. He asks you to study the wolf, to understand its hunger, to predict its movements. Machiavelli doesn't care about your intentions. He cares about the scoreboard. He looks at what actually happens, not what should happen. You might intend to be a peacemaker, but if your hesitation allows a war to start, then your good intentions are garbage. The result is blood. To survive this, you need to be two things: the lion and the fox. The lion is strong, it scares off the wolf's butt. It charges right into traps because it only understands force. The fox is weak physically, but it smells the snare a mile away. The fox can play dead. The fox can be invisible. Most people pick one mode and lose. You know, the lion type, the manager, who screams at his team to get respect. He uses fear bluntly, he hits a Ted, and eventually his team. Then there's the fox, the passive-aggressive friend who's too afraid to speak up, trying to manipulate from the sidelines. They get crushed because they have no teeth. The master of their own mind knows how to switch. They know when to roar, and they know when to shut up. And speaking of shutting up, silence is often the loudest sound in the room. In a negotiation, the person who speaks first usually loses. When you are silent, you become a mirror. Let the other person fill the silence with their nervous rambling. They'll show you their cards, their insecurities, and their needs, while you are still holding yours close to your chest. This isn't being fake. It's being a fortress. This brings us to the big question. Is it better to be loved or feared? Machiavelli says fear is safer. That sounds cold. I know. We all want to be liked. We measure our worth in Instagram hearts and LinkedIn applause. But love is fickle. It's a chain of obligation that people break the second it becomes inconvenient. Think about the last time a work friend threw you under the bus to save their own skin. That's the fragility of love. Fear, and by that, he means respect sticks. If people know there are consequences for crossing you, they won't cross you. If you're desperate to be loved, you turn into a doormat. You say yes to every request until you burn out. You end up resentful and empty. The person who commands respect sets the terms. They aren't cruel, but they are firm. They are the rock that breaks the waves, not the sand that gets washed away. But there is a heavy cost to this level of awareness. Once you eat the fruit from this tree, you cannot go back to the Garden of Ignorance. Once you see the strings that move the puppets, you can never watch the show with innocent eyes again. This leads us to the darker side of the throne, the part that history books often gloss over. We talk about the power of the prince, But we rarely talk about his pain. We rarely talk about the crushing weight of the crown. Imagine living in a world where you can never truly relax. If you accept that human nature is inherently self-interested, then trust becomes a luxury you cannot afford. Every handshake is a calculation. Every smile is a potential mask. You begin to scan every interaction for the hidden agenda. This is the golden cage. You have control. You have respect. You may even have power. But you are profoundly alone. This isolation is not an accident. It is a structural requirement of the position. To lead is to separate oneself from the herd. You want to see this in action? Look at Cesare Borgia. He was Machiavelli's muse. The living model of the prince. He was handsome, brilliant, and utterly ruthless. When his own captains rebelled against him, he didn't rage out. That's a rookie move. That's the lion. Instead, he smiled. He invited them all to a reconciliation dinner at his castle in Senegalia. He sent his guards away to look vulnerable. He played the role of the forgiving leader perfectly. The captains, blinded by their own ego and relief, walked right in. Cesare hugged them, poured the wine, and before the first course was finished, he had them all strung. 1 minute, they were honored guests. The next, they were ghosts. That is the terrifying precision of the prince. But here is the twist. Even Cesare, Borgia died fighting an obscure skirmish in Spain, alone and stripped of his glory. Why did he fall? Because for all his calculation, he could not account for the one variable that mocks all human planning. Fortuna. Luck. Machiavelli describes Fortuna not as a lady to be courted, but as a violent river. When she is angry, she floods the plains and destroys everything in her path. No amount of psychology or manipulation can stop the flood. The prince builds dams and dikes during the dry season. He prepares, but when the water rises, he is reminded of his mortality. This is the ultimate tragedy of the control freak. The desire to control everything is a denial of life itself. Life is chaotic, messy, and unpredictable. To try to hold it too tightly is like trying to hold water in your clenched fist. The harder you squeeze, the faster it slips away. So where does this leave us? Should we reject these dark teachings and go back to being naive sheep, waiting for the slaughter? Or should we become cynical monsters alone in our cold castles? There is a third way. It is the path of the integrated shadow. This is the true secret that lies buried beneath the cynicism of the prince. You do not study the darkness to become the darkness. You study it to become whole. A man who is incapable of violence is not peaceful, is armless. There is a vast difference. A peaceful man is a warrior who has a sword but keeps it sheathed. He knows he can bite, but he chooses not to. This choice is where true morality lives. Morality is not cowardice disguised as virtue. It is restrained power. When you understand the mechanisms of manipulation, you become immune to them. You see the gaslighting before it takes root in your mind. You see, the power plays in the boardroom, and instead of reacting with emotion, you react with strategy. You observe, Ju detag. Ju detag. You become the surgeon of your own reality. But the ink never truly dries. The manuscript of 1513 was not a tombstone. It was a mirror that has reflected every century since. We leave the candlelit farmhouse of Tuscany, but we do not leave the battlefield. We simply trade the mud and the blood for carpeted floors and fluorescent lights. The game has not changed, only the players and the scenery. In 1513, the court was full of daggers. Today, it's the open plan office and the family group chat. The modern Cesare Borgia is that narcissist in your life who uses They rewrite reality. You catch them in a lie, and they tell you you're crazy, that never happened, or you're too sensitive. They aren't attacking your body, they're attacking your sanity. They are conquering your territory not with armies, but with doubt. So, how do you survive the modern court? When a manipulator tries to provoke you, use the gray rock. Be boring. Be uninteresting. When they try to provoke a reaction to get their supply of drama, give them nothing. No anger, no tears, just a blank stare. You don't fight the lion, and you don't run. You just cease to be a handle they can grab. And we must address the ultimate modern prince. The algorithm. Machiavelli wanted a prince who knew everyone's secrets. Today, that prince is in your pocket. And it doesn't use guards. It uses dopamine. Think about that. Red notification. It's the Vegas slot machine trick. You check. Nothing. Check again. Boom. A like. A comment. A hit of chemical pleasure. That unpredictability is the leash. The algorithm knows what you hate and what you crave before you do. It manipulates you into wanting to stay scrolled in. We think the product is free. It's not. You are the product. Your attention is the territory being conquered. To retain your sovereignty in this environment requires a level of mental discipline that rivals the Stoics. It requires strategic solitude. In a world that constantly demands your attention, the act of unplugging is an act of rebellion. It is the only way to return to the farmhouse, to sit at your own desk, and to think your own thoughts. Without this solitude, you are merely a relay station for other people's opinions and agendas. You become a pawn who thinks he is a player. Here's the bottom line. Vertalk isn't about being a good person in the Sunday school sense. It's about having the skill to surf the chaos without drowning. The world is volatile. Economies tank. Careers vanish. The rigid moralist breaks because they cannot bend. The pure opportunist eventually gets caught in their own web. So, carry that farmhouse silence with you. Kindness without strength isn't virtue. It's just being harmless. Be the person who has a sword but keeps it sheathed. You've looked the world in the eye, seen the ugly parts, and decided to keep walking anyway. That's the win. The game never stops. The only question is, are you playing or are you being played? Sharpen your mind. I'll see you in the next one.